its power without surrendering to its wickedness. And also, his old friend Lupino needed rescuing. Of course, Reynaldo had a pretty strong suspicion that Lupino had betrayed the rebellion. But could Reynaldo really leave an old friend to the Ravens? Lupino. Apparently, the Mad Rabbit had sold a Pegasus that he did not exactly own. Lupino always wiggled out of trouble, given time. But he was out of time. Lupino's frantic message said that the Ravens were going to kill him for being a rebel spy. And that he had a clever plan. If the fleet reached him first, they'd string him up for that. Never mind the winged horse. Or so Lupino had told him over the far speaker anyway. Lupino had apparently managed to confuse the judge by arguing that he hadn't actually stolen a winged horse. He'd only sold it. But wait, where was the prison? The village was empty. Had everybody fled the Ravens? Don't be shy. Touché, he said, and died. That was odd. Reynaldo had been here, at this exact place, at this exact time. But this time, there were so many more ravens. If they didn't want their things broken, they really ought to make them stronger. Reynaldo looked around the empty village. How had he ever imagined Lupino was anything but a traitor? Any honest rabbit would have fled with the villagers. Well, the eyes have had it. that go to? Ravens were landing everywhere. The advance guard. He'd better get moving. If they got to Lupino first, they'd eat him for breakfast. Or a snack. Ravens weren't picky. If they got hungry, they sometimes forgot to interrogate their prisoners. Even top spies like Lupino. Well, unless he really was a traitor, obviously. Then they'd probably pin a medal on his chest. Well, he'd always wanted to do that. Dirty and bloody, Reynaldo finally reached Lupino. The rabbit was practicing his shuffle. Reynaldo recognized the cards. It was Lupino's favorite deck. Oh, I thought you were in danger. I am. The ravens are coming. Oh, the prison thing. Right, yeah, we see this guard owed me 53 ducats, so we made a deal. They're very reasonable people, actually, for weasels. Now, I got a brilliant plan to kidnap Zenobia. We capture Zenobia, we find out what she knows, and that's the whole war right there. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy. Capture the Emperor's greatest general, who also happened to be a deadly sorcerer and, oh, his only daughter? That would be worth it. On the other hand, he could still get to the core of the Sky Ripper, even if he couldn't get the whole thing. It must have great power. Zenobia wasn't just the Emperor's daughter, of course. She'd been Reynaldo's best friend in Sword Fu School. And you're still mad for her, the rabbit reminded him. They'd been close. She'd told him things no one else knew. But she never told him who she really was.
She knows all the Emperor's plans, chuckled the master spy.
She won't give them up easily.
She'll tell the interrogators, all right,
said Lupino. Taking her would change the game, all right. The city was already under Zenobia's control. I had to admire her efficiency. Reynaldo shivered at the thought of Zenobia at the mercy of the interrogators. Could he really turn her over to them? But this was war. It wasn't meant to be pretty. Done rather well, actually. The city was burning, and there was no one to put out the fires. If
Somehow Zenobia survived her father and inherited his crown. What sort of empire would she be heir to? But he couldn't think about that, could he? Hero wall, hero sword, firewall, fire extinguisher. This stone was incredibly valuable. Reynaldo could sense it. Also, it still had its price tag. Why was Lupino urging him to capture Zenobia? Obviously it was a trap. But you never knew how Lupino thought. Sometimes his plans were so convoluted they did the exact opposite to what Lupino wanted. And there must be some way to play on that, Reynaldo thought.
Sleep tight, thought Reynaldo. This chest had teaspoons stolen from every inn in Boreas. Oh, and something more useful. So, what's this plan of yours? Use me as bait, said Lupino. And he outlined a slightly complicated plan that involved geese, a net, setting the Farfarer a little bit on fire, Lupino dressing as an old blind toad, and Reynaldo hiding inside a monstrous watermelon. What could possibly go wrong?
thought Reynaldo.
Oh, this is gonna be fun,
said Lapino, as he ran to go set up his marvelous plan. People had laughed at the government workbench placement program, but you could see the benefits everywhere. Boy, someone has spent a lot of money for a graduation present. Once, he found a Superman issue #1 in mint condition in a jar he'd broken. He planned to keep breaking things until he had the whole series. Reynaldo felt dubious about the whole plan. With every step, he was waiting for it all to go horribly wrong. But against all odds, Lapino's idiotic plan worked. Zenobia's ravens ran off after the geese, the net dropped, and Reynaldo jumped out of the watermelon and put his sword to Zenobia's throat.
Reynaldo, she said. Are those new scars? They look good on you. You never returned my velvet jacket. It was my favorite. You look stupid in velvet. Oh, what does an imperial princess know about style? Oh, get a room, you two, said Lapino.
But the fleet was coming on fast, so they put Zenobia on the Farfarer and took her east over the Nexus.
She'd vanished from Swordfu School, from his life, without even saying goodbye, without ever telling him she was the Emperor's adopted daughter. Ah, Lapino was right, Reynaldo thought reluctantly. She knows things. She recognized his look. You're taking me to the interrogators, aren't you? She said, wide-eyed. And then she jumped, with horror. Reynaldo saw Zenobia plummeting. Then he saw the Nexus below them. Cats always land on their feet. Ah, she'd head for the Imperial outpost, yelled Lapino. You have to catch her. Cats can run faster, but foxes can run longer. If he ran, he could head her off before she reached her minions at the outpost. Well, he did love a good chase. Smashing things was fun.
there was an inscription on the platform. Balaleka lessons, with an address. More and more extraordinary. Reynaldo remembered when he'd first stolen one of these. Good times.
He was closing on her. He could smell her fear. He tried not to think about the interrogators at the secret base. What did they do to her? Maybe it didn't have to end that way. Maybe he could talk to her. But, after all, there were worse things the Imperials had done to friends of his.
It did not matter how outnumbered the rebellion was. The secret Zenobia held could level the playing field. Code, passwords. She could wreak havoc with just a few whispers to a far speaker. Ooh, wouldn't this gauntlet look swell with that jewel in it?
Reynaldo reached the outpost. The Imperials there were no match for him. Soon after, Zenobia limped up the path. When she realized he was already in front of her, she didn't even try to run. "Oh, you left without saying goodbye." Again, he said, "Please, I'm enjoying this a little too much." She said, shaken. "Oh, spare us the chit-chat, would you?" said Lapino as he shackled her hands so she couldn't throw spells. "She knows all his plans."
All the way back to the Farfarer, Lapino nagged Reynaldo about how the interrogators would pry all the intel out of Zenobia. How that would turn the tides in the imminent battle. All they had to do was take her to the rebels' secret base. Reynaldo didn't like to think about what the interrogators would do to her. Couldn't he just talk to her?
As they reached the ruins, Reynaldo could see ravens everywhere, searching for the rebel base. They'd have to hide the Farfarer or go on foot. What if we get separated? Asked Lupino. For once, thinking ahead. I'll show you a map to the base. Reynaldo told Lupino.
Reynaldo, don't do this,
Said Zenobia.
we were friends once.
Shut it, witch, or I'll shackle your mouth too, said Lupino. As Lupino pulled Zenobia off the Farfarer, he was practically sure he'd find something useful in one of these things. Reynaldo at hot potato. Your eyes. Reynaldo was walking Zenobia to the rebel secret base, where she would be interrogated. So, why was he feeling so scared? I need more materials, thought Reynaldo. It was time for a little exploration. The right jewel could really give you an edge. The wrong, well, it still looked pretty, didn't it?
This chest contained a Vorpal sword. I'm just kidding. Vorpal swords don't exist. Imagine getting a horse up in one of these things. He would be cursing a blue streak. His sword food teacher used to say power gems were cheating. Stupid fart. They caught their breath. It's beautiful, she said, looking at the ruins. This used to be the library of Ubar, he said, before your father's ravens smashed it. Do we have to talk politics? She asked. That's not how I want to remember you, she said with an odd, wistful look at her face. She was as beautiful as she'd ever been, and as brave. Lapino huffed. They got back on the trail. Who are you looking at? Oh, right. No one. Open, says me. Long stairs. So he was close to the rebel base. Nothing was on fire. So far, so good. I don't have to clean up around here, he thought. As they made their way to the secret rebel base, Reynaldo felt strange. Zenobia was his prisoner, yet somehow she felt more like an old friend. He wanted to tell her all his secrets, but suddenly the ruins lit up with thousands of fireworks. There was a thunderous roar and dust rose. The caves were collapsing.
The caves! You've been playing me?
Reynaldo said, and he stared at Zenobia.
I'm sorry, she said, and she seemed almost embarrassed. Then, everything went dark.
When Reynaldo came to, he had a terrible headache. Also, Zenobia's sword was at his throat, and her shackles were gone. So was Lupino.
The terrible thing is, he said, I really have missed you. Now that we've destroyed the rebellion, would you consider becoming an advisor to the Emperor's daughter?
I'm no one's servant. Everybody serves. Even if it's only destiny. I like to choose my own destinies, he said.
The whole point of a destiny is you can't choose. Oh, never mind, she said. Look, if I see you again, I'll have to kill you.
He watched her ship soar away. He would see her again, he decided. Even if he had to fight his way across the entire fleet.
The Imperial fleet was cleaning up the few rebel remnants. For only a moment, he thought about running.
But heroes don't run, even when the world is against them. Even when their cause is hopeless, and their efforts futile, and pointless, and useless, and death painful and guaranteed. He decided to stop thinking for a while.
Or I could go that way, he thought. Met a pirate captain who used hooks to get around his ship. Oh, what was his name again?
Reynaldo's arm was sore, his armor wet with raven blood. He was tired of death. But death was not yet tired of him. The rebels were losing. Badly. In some other universe, Reynaldo thought, he and Zenobia had left sword crew school together, taken other names and sailed off into the mists. Not this Zenobia, and not him. For him, there was nothing to do but forge ahead. Kill the Emperor and end this.
Imagine if you built a house on one of these things. Oh, that would be amazing. It would be like having a boat. Soon he'd confront the Emperor. Funny that this whole war had come about because the Emperor feared death. And now it was coming for him. There was some sort of lesson there, wasn't there? At last, he reached the Emperor's ship. Zenobia was there. "Why'd you have to come back?" she said. "Guess I'm just serving my destiny." He shrugged. "You don't even know what that word means," she said. "Do you ever wonder if things have been different all the time?" she said, and drew her sword. In the end, Reynaldo lay bleeding out on the deck. Zenobia sat by his side, upset. "What are you so upset about?" he asked. "You wouldn't understand. Why didn't you tell me you were going to leave school? I was afraid you'd convince me not to." "I guess I'll have to buy you a drink in the halls of the Valiant then," he told her, and then he was gone. Oh, damn it. He'd lost again, and died. But there was burning Ubar behind him. He still had all his destinies ahead of him. But he'd learned another true thing. Zenobia still had feelings for him. He knew enough now, he thought. All these truths tumbling around each other in his head. There must be a way to puzzle the pieces together. If he used everything he knew, he could discover a new path to destiny. The book's pages fluttered to the beginning once again. Faster than before? And he fell. The clouds parted over the Isles of Boreas. It was time to choose. The rebellion was in trouble. Ravens were scouting for the secret rebel base. They needed a game-changer. Pieces of the Sky Ripper had surfaced. Reynaldo knew that using it could go catastrophically wrong. But he was sure he could figure out how to use it safely. Also, a temple had risen out of empty desert. The Iblis Stone was hidden there. It was a dangerous artifact. It could corrupt its user into a bloodthirsty monster. Maybe he could find a way to use it, to take its power without surrendering to its wickedness. And also, his old friend Lupino needed rescuing. Of course, Reynaldo had a pretty strong suspicion that Lupino had betrayed the rebellion, and he had a gut feeling that he needed to use that to his advantage. Every child knew about the Sky Ripper. The Transcendent Emperor had buried its pieces deep. And then, this Emperor's horrific sacrifices had brought it back to the surface. Reynaldo wasn't exactly sure how to use the legendary weapon. But surely, there must be some way to do it without provoking another catastrophe. Had he, somehow, summoned the long-lost components of the legendary weapon out of the deep places of the Earth? It was more than Reynaldo could fathom. But if he could... As he set foot on the island, Reynaldo couldn't help feeling a bit curious. Was Lupino still waiting to be rescued? No. He was probably drinking champagne with the ravens. Did ravens drink champagne? Did rabbits? Reynaldo felt oddly thirsty, come to think of it. Why had he chosen the Sky Ripper?
Reynaldo never made plans that required constant vigilance. He was a hero. He didn't think too much. He just went with his gut and hoped it all worked out. The Sky Ripper was a long shot. He'd have to devote himself to it. No side journeys, no rescuing old friends. That was against his nature. Could he stick with it?
Hey, how do you tell if someone's far away, or just really small? That had been his mistake before, not trusting Zenobia's feelings for him. But how could he have known, after all these years of silence? Oh, this really didn't have much in the way of safety features, did it? That is a very cool sword, thought Reynaldo. No, seriously. He couldn't feel his paw anymore. Hey, I'm a firefox, thought Reynaldo. familiar. Had he lost this one in a card game? Welcome back, he thought. There it was. Sky Ripper's armature. The stuff that dreams are made of. Engineers' dreams, anyway.
The device was intricate. No one alive had the skill to make a thing like it. How was it part of a weapon at all? He'd have to ask a scientist. But first, he'd get the second piece. Sky Ripper had a heart. A core that had come to rest on the next island. Well, there was another island he could reach. Zenobia had just invaded it with her father's Raven battalions. She must be encamped there still. But fighting Zenobia now, that made no sense at all. He'd already sacrificed one friend to get this armature, was it? He didn't need to hurry to face her. She would find him. Asked himself why he changed course to confront Zenobia. He'd no idea. Sometimes he would just do things, and he could never figure out why he'd done them. Usually... The truth is, though, he wanted to see her, wasn't it? It had been a dozen years since Swordfu School. He'd followed every rumor about her, every scrap of news. Not that he still loved her. After all, she was his enemy. No, it was solely because, know your enemy.
All right, maybe he should stop pretending. He knew exactly how she felt about it. But their love affair always ended with a tragic death. Unless maybe he could find a way to dodge tragedy. Surely he could, couldn't he? Surprisingly unwounded. Who leaves these chests everywhere? Wondered Reynaldo. I should send him a thank you note. You couldn't go sticking jewels in your gauntlet just anywhere. What if you dropped one and broke it? Luckily, there was a bench right here. should follow my nose, thought Reynaldo. He couldn't do worse with Zenobia than he'd done with the core, could he? These things could really use a hand.
Reynaldo wasn't entirely sure how he was going to capture Zenobia. She'd be expecting him. And he didn't have Lapino to cook up a clever plan. Why was it again that he hadn't got the core?
Maybe because the results tended to be disastrous.
These streets were familiar. The Swordfu School was closed now, but he had been down that street 1,000 times. He knew that pub. He knew that alley. He knew the alley behind it much too well. No wonder Zenobia had chosen to invade this island herself.
Not everyone knew how to use magical gems. Of course, not everyone had magical gem gauntlets like he did.
Reynaldo slinked through Zenobia's ship, making no sound at all. Where were her guards? Finally, he reached her bedroom. She was curled up on her bed. Oh, he'd forgotten how beautiful she was. How sleek, how soft. He tapped her on the shoulder with his sword. She vanished. And he suddenly noticed he couldn't move except his mouth. In fact, soon he couldn't keep his mouth shut. He told Zenobia everything. Skyripper, the Iblistone, even where the secret rebel base was, until he was hoarse. It was some kind of truth spell. A talky truth spell. She called her father by Farspeaker Toad and filled His Majesty in. But why didn't he get the core? Croaked the Farspeaker in something like His Majesty's croak. Because I missed you, darling. Reynaldo grinned. He doesn't even know why, frowned Zenobia. That makes no sense. It's a trap, shouted the Emperor. I'll meet you at the outpost, and I'll bring my interrogators. If Reynaldo came face to face with the Emperor, maybe he could assassinate him. But maybe it would be smarter and safer to turn Zenobia against her father. What are you doing? Asked Zenobia. Did you ever wonder why the Emperor adopted you? He asked her. She shook her head. He told her. His Majesty wanted to bring the lost gods back. They could make him an eater of souls, an immortal. But to seal his bargain with them, he needed a sacrifice. Someone who truly loved him. She was stunned. Furious. You're lying. Under a truce spell? It's a trick. You can't prove that. Take me to the observatory, and I will. What kind of proof could you possibly have? She said as they landed on the Nexus. Your father ritually sacrificed a village, and he left witnesses? The scientists resurrected one. Well, it's not really alive, but it can talk. A true witness. She frowned. The dead can't lie. Well, I bet they could. They just don't have any reason to. She nodded grimly. You go on ahead. I don't want the Ravens to see me. Good thing Reynaldo didn't have vertigo.
Reynaldo checked for a false compartment. Nope. He wished there were more pylons he could use the hook on. He really needed to construct additional pylons. This jewel was more than sparkly. It had arcane power and an engraving. To Cindy.
She caught up with him. Don't you think I'd know if my father wanted to invoke the Lost Gods? Would he tell you? No. Would you help him? No. I'd burn his books. Why'd he adopt a stray cat? You don't ask a thing like that. No, not when there's no good answer, she said, her whiskers twitching. This was definitely better than pulling yourself up in a bucket. With all the secrets he revealed to the Emperor, the Ravens were probably heading for the secret base. Reynaldo began to wonder if there would be anyone left to save, if Zenobia changed sides. You can't really reason with an energy ball, he thought. Well, they really needed to redecorate anyway. The observatory was a burning hulk. Dead scientists and black feathers everywhere. The Ravens had burned the reanimated witness to cinders. Reynaldo was stunned. There goes my proof. These were scientists, not rebels, Zenobia said, upset. Why would he do this? I don't know. Let's go to the fleet and ask him. Yes. I'll meet you on the mountains. There's something I have to get first. But could he afford to meet her in the mountains? He'd given the Empire the location of the secret rebel base. They would need rescuing. Why was he going to meet up with her? Wasn't it more important to rescue the Rebel Council from the almost certain Imperial attack? Why was he in this war anyway? Was it really to fight the good fight, or did he just want to see her again? One of these days, Reynaldo thought, I should really figure out my motives before I pounce. Nah. Was it true? Was he on this adventure just to see Zenobia again? The Imperial heir was not an easy cat to see. Well, she'd ignored all his Kwanzaa gifts. And on the other paw, trying to get a date by joining a war against your intended was, let's say, pretty optimistic. But on the back paw, thought Reynaldo, yes, it sounded exactly like him. Good. I'm so glad we had this little chat, he told himself.
What was really fun was hooking yourself onto a moving ship. There was a sign. Take the goat across first.
There were a lot of dead ravens along the side of the road. Someone had rampaged through here on a killing spree.
What had Zenobia gone to get? He had a chilling feeling it was the Iblis stone. Zenobia was level-headed. A stone to make anyone bloodthirsty. You could tell her style from the blade work and the dead bird.
Look, it's not personal, but you all smell terrible.
Reynaldo wondered what he should do when he found Zenobia. What could he do if she had the Iblis stone? He reached the summit, expecting no one. But there she was, steaming, pacing.
I'm gonna kill him, she said. I'm gonna kill all his ravens, and then him, and then his family, and all the eggs and tadpoles. And then